Flying is something millions of people do every single day, yet most travelers never learn the hidden tricks that can completely transform their experience. Airlines work hard to keep certain things quiet, not because they're trying to be mysterious, but because the average passenger simply doesn't ask questions or look deeper. Don't forget to subscribe so you stay updated with the travel hacks airlines won't tell you about. But frequent flyers, experienced travelers, and insiders know that the flight experience is full of small secrets, little details that can save you money, reduce stress, help you avoid discomfort, and even get you better treatment on board. Whether you're flying for business, vacation, or visiting family, understanding these flight secrets gives you a huge advantage. You stop feeling confused or overwhelmed, and you start feeling in control. These are the kinds of insights that seasoned travelers use every day without thinking twice. And once you learn them, you'll wonder how you ever flew without them. In this video, we're diving into 8 flight secrets that can dramatically improve your next trip. Some of them are simple, some are surprising, and some will change the way you look at flying forever. So let's get into it and unlock the secrets that airlines don't advertise, but frequent travelers rely on. 1. Airlines don't want you to know how dynamic pricing really works. Most passengers think airline pricing is random, but it's far from random. Airlines use extremely advanced computer systems that track demand, browsing behavior, time of day, booking patterns, seat availability, historical trends, and even which device you're using. Every time you search for a flight, the airline is learning something about you. Many travelers notice that prices rise when they repeatedly check the same route. This isn't a coincidence. Airlines use cookies and browsing signals to identify interest. If the system thinks demand is increasing, it slowly raises the price to push you toward booking quickly. The trick is to avoid showing too much interest. Clear your cookies, switch to incognito mode, or use a different device when checking prices. Another thing airlines don't advertise is that prices vary dramatically depending on when you book. Most people assume booking far in advance guarantees the lowest fare, but airlines know this assumption works in their favor. The cheapest prices are usually found 8 to 12 weeks before departure for domestic flights and about 3 to 5 months before international flights. Outside of those windows, prices either haven't stabilized or have already started climbing. Another secret is that flight prices often drop on Tuesdays and Wednesdays because fewer people book on those days. Airlines release sales midweek, hoping to fill unsold seats. If you check during weekends or evenings when demand spikes, you'll usually see higher prices. Airlines also keep quiet about fare buckets. Each flight has several pricing tiers, and once the cheapest bucket sells out, the price automatically increases even if dozens of seats remain. That's why 2 people sitting side by side may have paid drastically different prices. Frequent travelers know how to work around this system. They track flights over weeks, sign up for fare alerts, use flexible date tools, and watch for price drops after major holidays. The more you understand dynamic pricing, the less likely you are to overpay. 2. Why boarding order isn't about efficiency, but about money. Most passengers think boarding groups are designed to get everyone seated quickly, but that's not the real reason they exist. Airlines use boarding groups as a subtle marketing strategy to encourage passengers to pay for upgrades, loyalty memberships, and premium credit cards. Instead of a fast, logical boarding system, airlines intentionally create a structure where many travelers feel frustrated by the long wait, the fight for overhead bin space, and the slow-moving lines. Why? Because the more inconvenience you feel, the more appealing priority boarding becomes. It's a psychological technique used to push you towards spending extra money. Boarding early doesn't just get you on the plane sooner, it guarantees overhead bin space. Airlines know this benefit is valuable, especially since modern flights are often overpacked and storage is limited. That's why early boarding is bundled with premium credit cards, loyalty status, seat upgrades, or paid add-ons. It's one of the easiest ways for airlines to earn additional revenue without offering anything physical in return. Another little-known secret is that boarding from the front to the back is one of the least efficient boarding methods. It creates bottlenecks and slows everything down. The fastest method scientifically is random boarding or back to front by window, middle, and aisle. But airlines avoid using efficient methods because they reduce the perceived value of priority boarding. There's also a psychological factor. Travelers respond emotionally to boarding groups. Being placed in a higher group feels like having lower status, which pushes people toward upgrades. Airlines carefully design these groups to maximize revenue, not speed. By understanding this, you stop feeling frustrated during the boarding process. Instead, you recognize it as a marketing system, not a transportation system. You can decide whether early boarding is worth paying for, or whether waiting a few extra minutes doesn't matter. When you know the truth behind boarding groups, you make decisions with confidence instead of emotion. 3. The seatbelt sign isn't always about safety. Most passengers assume the seatbelt sign turns on only when there's turbulence or some kind of danger, but that's not always the case. Pilots sometimes switch on the sign for reasons that have nothing to do with with safety, and understanding this secret explains a lot about what happens behind the scenes during a flight. One reason pilots activate the sign is simple. They want to keep passengers seated because the cabin crew is about to perform a task that requires space and clear aisles. For example, if the crew needs to move large carts, restock supplies, or coordinate cabin service without people constantly walking around, the pilot may turn the sign on to limit movement. Another reason is upcoming turbulence. Not turbulence that's currently happening, but turbulence predicted by weather radar ahead. Sometimes the sky looks smooth, and passengers are confused about why they must sit down. But the pilot sees wind patterns, air pressure changes, and altitude shifts that passengers cannot detect. Turning on the sign early prevents unnecessary risk. There's also a psychological factor involved. Pilots sometimes turn the sign on to reduce passenger behavior that makes the flight harder to manage. If too many people are getting up at once, heading to the bathrooms, or clogging the aisles, the sign may appear as a gentle reminder to stay seated. It's not necessarily dangerous, it just helps maintain order. Another hidden truth is that turbulence levels vary dramatically depending on where you sit. The front of the plane feels less movement, while the back exaggerates every bump. So while a pilot might turn on the sign because the rear of the plane is hitting rough air, the passengers in the front might barely feel anything. The sign also helps protect the airline legally. If a passenger gets injured while standing when the sign is on, the airline is not responsible. But if someone is hurt when the sign is off, the situation becomes far more complicated. Many passengers misinterpret the seatbelt sign as a direct indicator of danger, and that misunderstanding creates anxiety. Knowing the truth helps reduce that fear. The sign is not a panic button. It's often a tool for organization, prediction, or protection. 4. Not all turbulence is natural. Most travelers believe turbulence is only caused by weather, but that's just one source. There are actually several types of turbulence, and many of them have nothing to do with storms or wind. One of the biggest hidden causes is something called wake turbulence, created by other aircraft. When a plane flies, it leaves swirling air patterns behind it. These are especially strong behind large aircraft like Boeing 777s, 787s, or Airbus A350s. If your plane is flying through a busy corridor or too close behind a heavy aircraft, you can feel sudden bumps even in clear sky. This is why air traffic controllers keep safe spacing between planes. Another type of turbulence comes from jet streams, fast-moving rivers of air thousands of feet above the ground. These invisible air currents can be incredibly strong, and when your plane crosses them, it can jolt sharply even though the sky looks perfectly calm. Pilots train specifically for these moments, and planes are built to handle far more pressure than passengers ever feel. Mountain ranges cause another form called mountain wave turbulence. Even if the plane is flying far above the peaks, the wind blowing over mountains can push pockets of unstable air upward, hitting the aircraft unexpectedly. But here's a secret airlines never advertise. Some turbulence is man-made, caused by climate control changes inside the plane. When cabin pressure or airflow settings shift, it can create sensations similar to mild turbulence. It's harmless, but most passengers assume it's weather-related. Another truth is that pilots sometimes choose routes that include turbulence on purpose because it shortens the overall flight time. A little shaking is better than adding 20 minutes to the journey. They avoid dangerous areas, but mild or moderate turbulence is considered normal and safe. Understanding these different causes helps calm your mind. Turbulence is uncomfortable, but not dangerous, and it rarely surprises pilots. They see weather radar, wind data, reports from other aircraft ahead, and atmospheric readings long before you ever feel the bumps. And even when the cause isn't weather, the aircraft is designed to withstand forces far stronger than anything turbulence can produce. Once you understand turbulence is mostly predictable, manageable, and often unrelated to storms, the fear fades. You stop gripping the armrest and start trusting the engineering and skill keeping you safe. 5. Why flight attendants notice more about you than you think. Most passengers believe flight attendants are simply there to serve drinks and snacks, but in reality, they are trained observers. They notice far more than you think, and the information they gather helps determine how smoothly the flight runs. The moment you step onto the aircraft, flight attendants are scanning several details about you, not to judge you, but to understand how you might behave during the flight. They observe whether you're tired, anxious, drunk, sick, injured, confused, or traveling alone. They also pick up on your mood. If you board smiling and polite, they immediately categorize you as someone who will likely be cooperative. If you board stressed, irritated, or impatient, they note that too, because those passengers are more likely to cause issues later. They also look for people who may need help. For example, if someone is elderly, pregnant, or traveling with a disability, attendants mentally prepare to keep an eye on them throughout the flight. They also note passengers with medical equipment or mobility challenges because they might require special attention. Flight attendants also identify strong, capable passengers who might help in an emergency. Airlines don't announce this, but it's a standard part of safety training. If something goes wrong, attendants need to know who can assist with opening doors, helping with first aid, or guiding others. They never reveal this process, but they are always evaluating. Another secret is that being polite to flight attendants actually benefits you. Crew members consistently go the extra mile for passengers who treat them kindly. If you smile, say hello, and speak respectfully, you stand out instantly. You might receive extra snacks, more attentive service, or a quiet tip about open seats in a better part of the plane. It's not favoritism in the negative sense, it's simply human nature. Everyone responds better to kindness. On the other hand, being rude or demanding at the start of the flight immediately places you on the wrong side of the crew's attention. They won't mistreat you, but they won't prioritize you either. And if something unexpected happens during the flight, they are far less likely to make accommodations for someone who was disrespectful. 6. Why your carry-on bag is more important than your checked luggage. Most travelers think checked luggage is where the important belongings go, and the carry-on is just for convenience. But seasoned travelers know the opposite is true. Your carry-on bag is the single most important item you bring on a flight, and once you understand why, you'll never underestimate it again. The biggest reason is simple. Checked luggage gets lost more often than airlines want to admit. Even with modern tracking systems, delays and mistakes happen every single day. Bags miss connections, tags fall off, and sorting systems malfunction. When your checked bag disappears, your carry-on becomes your lifeline. It should contain everything essential: medications, chargers, travel documents, valuables, and at least one change of clothes. If your checked luggage is delayed by even 24 hours, your carry-on is the only thing keeping you comfortable and functioning. Another secret is that checked luggage is treated with far less care than passengers imagine. Bags are tossed, stacked, rolled, crushed, and exposed to heat, cold, and rough conditions. That's why valuables, electronics, breakables, and important paperwork should never go in checked luggage. Airlines won't compensate you for most of these items. Carry-ons also help you stay flexible. If a flight is canceled, delayed, or diverted, passengers with only carry-ons can switch flights quickly. Those with checked bags have to wait, sometimes so long that all alternative flights fill up. The airline prioritizes travelers who don't need their luggage rerouted. Another hidden truth is that sometimes airlines gate check bags when overhead bins fill up. That means your bag is taken away at the last second and placed under the plane. To protect yourself, always keep your most important items in a smaller personal bag, one that stays with you no matter what. Carry-ons also protect you from unexpected layovers. If your flight gets diverted due to weather or mechanical issues, you might spend hours, or even the night, somewhere you never planned to be. Having your essentials with you makes that situation far less miserable. There's also the comfort factor. Your carry-on lets you control your in-flight experience. Snacks, neck pillows, headphones, power banks, these small items can make long flights far more tolerable. Relying on the airline for comfort is a mistake most travelers learn the hard way. The truth is simple. Your checked luggage is optional. Your carry-on is survival. Every experienced traveler knows this, and it's one of the biggest flight secrets that can completely change the way you prepare for every trip moving forward. 7. Why pilots avoid talking about certain flight conditions. Passengers often imagine pilots chatting openly about every detail of the flight, but in reality, there are certain things pilots purposely avoid discussing. This isn't about hiding danger or keeping secrets from passengers. It's about protecting the cabin from unnecessary stress, keeping the experience smooth, and maintaining absolute focus. Pilots are trained to communicate only what passengers need to know, not everything they're dealing with behind the controls. For example, if the aircraft is flying through air pockets that might produce light turbulence, a pilot will simply say that the ride might be a bit bumpy. They won't tell you the exact reasons, the atmospheric pressures, the wind shear readings, or the altitude adjustments they're making. Not because it's dangerous, but because most passengers don't want or need that information. It would only create fear instead of calm. Another thing pilots avoid mentioning is mechanical adjustments. Almost every flight requires small corrections, recalibrations, or system checks. Modern planes are incredibly advanced, designed to compensate for issues long before they become problems. To pilots, these things are routine, but if they shared every detail with the cabin, people would panic over normal procedures that happen on nearly every trip. Pilots also keep quiet about weather patterns they're navigating around. Storm clouds, tailwinds, crosswinds, jet streams, these elements are constantly analyzed in the cockpit, but pilots typically mention only the basics. It's not secrecy, it's strategy. If a pilot speaks too technically or too honestly about certain conditions, it can cause unnecessary panic among passengers who don't have aviation knowledge. Another detail pilots avoid is altitude changes made for passenger comfort. Sometimes the plane drops or climbs thousands of feet simply to find smoother air. Passengers might feel the shift in their stomachs, but pilots will simply say, "We're making a small adjustment." They don't mention that another plane is passing above, or that the jet stream is causing instability, or that air traffic control advised a faster route. It keeps things calm. Pilots also avoid discussing bird activity near airports, even though it's a common occurrence. Birds rarely cause problems, but if a pilot announces there are birds near the runway, passengers will panic. Instead, pilots manage it quietly because they're trained for these scenarios. A huge part of being a pilot is managing emotions, both their own and those of hundreds of passengers. People trust confidence, not complexity. Pilots speak simply, calmly, and with purpose. They know that revealing too much creates anxiety, while revealing too little maintains peace. So when you hear a pilot speak, understand this. They're filtering information not to hide anything, but to make your flight as smooth and stress-free as possible. They are trained to keep you safe, not to overload you with details. And in that sense, silence is not secrecy, it's professionalism. 8. Why airlines sometimes delay flights, even when the weather looks perfect. One of the biggest mysteries passengers complain about is why flights get delayed on perfectly clear days. The sky is blue, the weather is calm, and the airport seems quiet. Yet the departure time pushes back again and again. Most travelers assume it's incompetence or inefficiency, but the real reasons airlines delay flights are far more complex, and they reveal how interconnected the aviation system truly is. First, a delay at one airport can trigger a chain reaction across multiple cities. If your plane is arriving from somewhere else, and that earlier flight was delayed, maybe because of weather, mechanical checks, crew rest requirements, or congestion, then your flight will also be delayed. Even if your weather is perfect, the previous city might have been dealing with storms or operational issues hours earlier. The aviation world is one giant domino effect. Another major reason is air traffic control. On clear days, airports with heavy traffic sometimes impose flow restrictions because too many planes are trying to take off or land at the same time. When runways or taxiways reach capacity, flights are slowed down to avoid unsafe congestion. Passengers on the plane see nothing wrong, but from the control tower's perspective, things are overloaded. Airlines also delay flights because crews reach their duty limits. Pilots and flight attendants must follow strict rules about how many hours they can work. If they are approaching the limit, even by minutes, the flight cannot depart until the next available crew arrives. Safety regulations don't bend, even for perfect weather. Maintenance checks are another hidden cause. Even tiny issues, like a sensor reading, a small vibration, or a light that flickers, must be inspected before takeoff. These checks often happen behind closed doors, so passengers rarely see the reason for the delay. But ignoring such details could create bigger problems in the air. Airlines also delay flights strategically to avoid creating bigger disruptions later. If they know a flight will land at a crowded airport during a peak rush, they may delay departure slightly to ensure smoother arrival and faster gate access. A 20-minute delay now can save an hour of waiting on the tarmac later. Ground crew coordination also plays a role. Fueling, catering, cleaning, luggage loading, and aircraft inspections must happen in sequence. If even one team is behind schedule, the whole process slows down. Passengers only see the final boarding stage, not the dozens of tasks happening before that. In short, perfect weather doesn't mean perfect operations. A flight is connected to hundreds of moving parts, and airlines often delay to prevent bigger issues. Once you understand the system, delays feel less frustrating because you realize they're often done to keep the journey safe, smooth, and efficient. At the end of the day, traveling isn't just about getting from one place to another. It's about understanding the little things that make the journey smoother, less stressful, and a whole lot more enjoyable. The truth is, flying becomes easier once you know what's really happening behind the scenes. Most passengers only see the surface, the boarding lines, the announcements, the turbulence, the delays. But once you learn the secrets that experienced travelers rely on, the whole experience starts to make sense. You stop feeling like you're at the mercy of the airline, and you start feeling prepared, confident, and in control. That's the real goal of these videos, to give you knowledge that actually helps you in the real world, not just information that sounds good, but doesn't make a difference. When you understand things like why pilots communicate the way they do, why delays happen even in perfect weather, or why flight attendants pay attention to small details, you become a smarter, calmer traveler. And that confidence stays with you every time you step on a plane. So if you learned something new today, or if even one of these secrets made you think differently about flying, make sure you stick around. We share tips like these in every video, things airlines don't explain, but you definitely deserve to know. And if you want more travel tricks, flight insights, and behind-the-scenes knowledge, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more travelers, and it makes sure you never miss a video that could save you time, money, or stress on your next trip. Also, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and share it with someone who's flying soon. You never know, one simple tip might completely change their travel experience too. Thanks for watching, thanks for supporting the channel, and as always, safe travels on your next journey.